Welcome to AfricanPod. My name is Philip Nyakbo, and in this episode, we are looking at one of the most powerful elements of communication known to the human race. My guest is a US-based African doctor, and he has written a book about it. Welcome back to AfricanPod. All over the world and across every culture, symbols represent a powerful element in communication. In the West African nation Ghana, the Ashantis, also called the Akans, developed a set of unique symbols called Adinkra. And as can be expected, they retain deep cultural meanings that words alone cannot convey. From the United States, a medical doctor who is originally from Ghana has just published a book about the Adinkra symbols, explaining their hidden meaning at different levels. More than just explaining their hidden meaning, Dr. Charles Korankye has created a new alphabet system using only the Adinkra symbols. It's all so intriguing. So, on the line to the US state of Wisconsin, I asked Dr. Charles Korankye to tell me more about his new book, why he wrote it, and the potential benefits.
Thank you, Philip, for inviting me to AfricanPod. I have always been intrigued about the Adinkra symbols since I was a child. I grew up with the symbols. I've seen them, I see them all over as a child in Ghana. There is always this fascination about them. I always wanted to know more about them. Yes, I always have felt that I need to, that there was a deeper meaning to the symbols than what they represent. People love the symbol just from the way they look. The deeper meanings are always not obvious to individual. So it just came to me one day that there is something more, and the symbols could actually be represented in an alphabet form. And that is what took me to the point of writing the book.
And we'll explore that aspect a little bit more. But just to give it a broader perspective, I'm interested in your professional life at the moment, what you do.
I'm a medical doctor by profession. I, started my medical education in Ghana, and till after immigrating to the US to join my wife, I did my fellowship in family practice. So currently I'm a family practice physician in Wisconsin, USA.
And so how did you find time then to go back in time in your mind to explore the subject of the fascinating Adinkra symbols?
Well, it was difficult. As a doctor, you're busy, you have responsibility to your patient. So the only time I could do it were, times that I had some free time, which were very few times. It took me a while to be able to write it. But as I got to understand the meanings behind the symbols, I had this passion, and I felt that I should be able to share that with others. And so that was the motivational factor that I had throughout the times that I wrote the book.
So, Charles, you've lived in the US for quite a number of years, and it took you that long to come to the point of deciding to write the book. So, describe to me the kind of mental exercise you went through, the memories from your childhood that you had to reach into in order to produce this.
Yeah, thank you for your question. But I, as in childhood, I've had these symbols. I have clothing with the symbols on them. I've seen, you see the symbols, especially in Ghana. You see it on advertisement boards and on television buildings. So you kind of had a mental picture about the symbols, and you have constructed on some meanings that you attribute to those symbols, and some of them you are taught orally as to what they mean. But the moment that I decided to write the book was when I had that awareness that these symbols actually can be an alphabet system. And from that moment, the challenge that I had was that I needed to represent the symbols in an electronic format. And so there was the challenge of time, to be able to find time to write the book, and the challenge of also um, be able to draw the symbols in the electronic format to be able to write the book. And then also the challenge of associating a particular symbol to a particular alphabet. And also, if you get a copy of the book, you see that there is the tree of life and also the numerology section of the book, which they are all things that are unfolded. And also there is the phonetic section also of the book.
And I'm still intrigued, Charles. When did you actually feel drawn to the Adinkra symbols? And I know you've mentioned growing up in Ghana, but I wonder if you were drawn to it the same way as you were drawn to it by the time you spent many years in America. So when did you feel drawn to the Adinkra symbols?
I would say I got, drawn to the symbols during my last rotation. It was actually in psychiatry. We had gone to the Kakum National Park. We actually were in the central region, and we had gone to the national park. There were, you had symbols, craft made of the symbols that they sell at the park. And I found a book which was entitled The Visual Symbols of Adinkra Alphabet. And when I read that book, actually, I wrote the day that I bought the book, and it was in 2004. And so ever since, I'll pick up the book, look at it, open up the pages, look at the symbols, and try to understand the meaning behind the symbols and all the hidden meaning behind the symbols and ways that the symbols were used in traditionally in the past, ways that the symbols were used in communication, and also how we could use the symbols, in the present time.
So what is the essence of the Adinkra symbols?
Well, the Adinkra symbols, they are visual symbols. They originally created by the Akans that represent concepts or aphorisms. So the origins of the symbols are not known. There are some, I would say, postulations on as to how they came about. Some think that the symbols came about in 1818 between the Ashanti-German War, when the Ashanti at that time defeated the Germans were in Cote d'Ivoire, and the craftsmen, the captives, some of them were said to be among them were craftsmen who had the symbols and also introduced it into the Ashantis. And also another way that people say about how the symbols came about is that Adinkra means farewell in the Akan language. And so the symbols were worn by people to say farewell to the dead. So that's kind of how people say about how the symbols came about.
So now you have decided to reinvent it, if we can put it that way, into an alphabet system. How practical is that?
The Adinkra symbols are already known to the people of Ghana. So in making the symbols into an alphabet system, one, it brings out the meaning behind the symbols to the make it easily available to the Ghanaian people. You will get to use the symbols in their daily lives, and also the symbols that I actually chose for the alphabet system are they're all symbols with some virtues, and I gave all of them. There are 3 levels of meaning to all the symbols. They have the literal meaning, a physical meaning, also a metaphysical meaning. And so beside being an alphabet system, by knowing the symbols, you learn about all these virtues that actually will make someone a better person.
To your compatriots back in Ghana and parts of West Africa where the Adinkra symbols is known, what impact do you think this is going to have on them?
By the use of the symbols, people will have, one, it will improve communication, in Ghana and the rest of Africa. and or wherever the symbols are adopted. If you take the way the symbols were used in the past, for instance, like a symbol like being kebi and epa, when being kebi means bite not one another, epa has to do with the judicial system, so it means justice. And in the past, when these two symbols are written together, it just means justice for all. But by assigning these symbols to an alphabet, each particular symbol to a particular alphabet, now people get to know if you use that in the writing system, you will see that if you write, let's say you write a word like love, if you write with an English letter, each letter is just a letter. But if you write the word love with the Adinkra alphabet, each letter now means more. You now have Emre Dane and Nyame Bibi Wasoro, Besesaka, and Eban that you use to write those letters. Each of them have meaning behind them, and even they're bringing all those letters together also gives it another level of meaning. There's a higher meaning to words written with the Adinkra alphabet than you will have with the English alphabet. And beside that, also Ghanaians are already used to the Adinkra symbols. So if you
and not just Ghanaians, but people in other parts of West Africa,
Ghanaians, and also the symbols are used in Ghana and other parts of West Africa. So they also you can find them in Cote d'Ivoire also. But all those areas where the symbols are used now, because people are already used to these symbols, the literacy rate, in fact, people will just go up if you start using the Adinkra alphabet, because people already know that Sankofa, they know how it's written. It starts with an S, and Jinyame starts with J, and that's associated with the letter G. And so you have that. Before, people who were not literate will become literate just because they know those symbols.
But Dr. Charles Korankye, moving into the 21st century at this time, and with just what you've said in terms of promoting literacy, some people might actually see it as a step going backwards, because how do you begin to incorporate the alphabetical system in terms of the Adinkra symbols into computing, for example?
Oh, no, I would not say it's a step backwards, really. I think it's a step forward, because the first thing when it comes to literacy is being able to read and write. So if you have someone who has the symbols, they already know. Well, people know the symbols. You already make into an alphabet system. Instantly, those people can now write. And if they study a little bit more, they will be able to read from it. Incorporating it into the electronic system is just another step. The Unicode system, all that you need is to incorporate the alphabet into the Unicode system, which is already in process. And when that happens, you can use them electronically, just like any other symbol, any other alphabet. We have the English alphabet, we have the Chinese alphabet, we have the Japanese alphabet. There are other alphabets out there. So you just incorporate it, just like any other alphabet. In fact, that process is quite easy.
So, according to your research, how many Adinkra symbols are there?
There are over 100 Adinkra symbols. In the book, because English is the language of instructions in Ghana, only 26 symbols were used. And actually 26 symbols were used in the alphabet system. There were 3 additional symbols added in the numerical numerology system. So to make up a total of 29 symbols were used. and each particular symbol was assigned to a particular alphabet. So in the Adinkra alphabet system, the only 26 symbols were used. You have 5 vowels and you have 21 consonants, just like you have in the English alphabet system.
So it's quite a project or a thinking you're engaging in, and it's great that you use the example of the Chinese alphabet and the Japanese alphabet and maybe the Korean as well that I can think of as well. So what you're saying is you think that in the future, the Adinkra symbols with the alphabet system that you have created and explained in your book could become incorporated into a computer software system.
That is right. That is what. That's the next stage of the Adinkra alphabet system, and if that is done, then it's easy for anyone to write with the symbols electronically. But beside that, you can still, you need electronic form. Otherwise, to write it now, you will just need the individual symbols to be able to write with it.
So tell me your experience in writing this book itself, the book you call Adinkra Alphabet, the Adinkra symbols as alphabet and their hidden meanings.
I was very happy to write it. I started, slowly, assigning the symbols, particular symbols to a particular alphabet first. You have to decide on which symbols to assign to which particular alphabet. Then design the symbols because the original Adinkra symbols are much more, difficult to write in an alphabet system. I had to simplify the symbols. And then there were a few that were actually modified for the ease of writing. So learning, Adobe Photoshop to be able to do the modification was a challenge, and obviously time was also a big challenge. But it just what I realized is that writing a book is a process. You start gradually and you just build on, and before you know it, it took some years, but gradually, before I knew it, I was done with it.
You make it sound simple, right? So tell me though, what would you say should be? What would you expect to be the ideal outcome with this book and the Adinkra symbols from now on?
My hope is that people will understand the symbols. They will appreciate the deeper meanings behind the symbols, be able to know the alphabet system, and eventually be able to write with the Adinkra alphabet.
And why will that be something wonderful?
It will be wonderful because people will, from and even looking at the response that I've gotten on Facebook, I see that people are happy to just see words written in the Adinkra alphabet system because they are they are tuned with these symbols. It's like they feel part of these symbols, and they get more meaning from it, than just writing a word with the English alphabet. And this is because they grew up with these symbols, so they have that special connection with the symbols. And so I know that writing will actually become an enjoyable exercise for people when they do with the Adinkra alphabet system.
So tell me maybe a couple of your own favorite Adinkra symbols and what they mean to you.
The symbols, it's so difficult to single out a few of them. They are just all wonderful symbols. I like Emredane. Time changes. You have to adapt to time and space. Nyame Bibi Wasoro, aiming for something higher is also a symbol that I like. So I can't really single out a few of them, but I think they are all wonderful symbols. You just have to understand the meaning behind them, being KB, bite not one another, um, and then and the me even the associate, for instance, give you an idea about gravity. He that doesn't know, if he learns, he would know. You just they just have this. You just get this. There's something beautiful about the meaning behind them, and then even understanding the deeper meanings behind them. Just you just learn so much, and there is this virtuous thing that you learn with the symbols. And so I think that is the part that I want people to embrace. It's not just introducing another alphabet system for people to write with, but just embracing the meaning behind the symbols and writing with something that brings up the goodness in people.
And the most fascinating part of your book I found was from pages 71 through to 78, because you list the names of all African countries, all 54 African countries, and you actually write the names in the Adinkra symbols.
That's right. That's correct.
Was that a difficult thing to do?
No, I mean once I was able to design all the alphabets, it was really not difficult to write with them, because all that I need to do is just the word in English, so you just replace the English words with the Adinkra alphabets.
Very fascinating, Dr. Charles Korankye. And so, where can people find this book if they're interested?
The book is available on my website, www.adinkraalphabet.com, and also it's also available on Amazon, amazon.com.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to AfricanPod. Dr. Charles Korankye, who practices medicine in the US state of Wisconsin, was our guest on AfricanPod. His new book about the hidden meaning of Adinkra symbols from West Africa is fascinating. And more than that, he has invented a unique alphabet system using only the Adinkra symbols. For more on the good news and the bad news about Africa, subscribe to the AfricanPod on iTunes podcast, on YouTube, search for AfricanPod, and on our website, AfricanPod.com. Follow us on Twitter at AfricanPod. AfricanPod is now available on Google's Android podcast. My name is Philip Nyako, and thanks for listening.